With the 11th edition Codex on the way, are orcs really about getting stuck in, or is it about the more dakka? Now, of course, we still get stuck in and crump heads off, cave into umis, but there's a lot to be said about the attraction that dakka has drawn to the general community, especially on the competitive side. So today we're going to talk about the hot takes, maybe the new way to wall, quote unquote, and how orcs will adjust. Of course, if you don't always keep your nose to the what's going on in 40K, this is a good way to just get a nice summarization of all the hottest takes, the strongest, and some of the weaker positions on what has changed, and just really get informed about the general consensus that everybody is resorting to. And of course, my personal opinion and preferences, because of course, we all got our personal preferences. So, with that being said, Gits, what's the army identity now? What's been going on? Of course, I've had a general working theory. If you haven't been paying attention, it's really been that I think that for GW is looking to increase the points on everything, on all factions across the board, make games faster, make armies feel more elite. Therefore, the points increases that became onto orcs, I think, are going to be repetitive across all of 40K for the entire edition. But for us, if you were looking at what happened before, most of your lists are going to go up 10 to like 20%, depending on what you are really teching into. Now, orcs are definitely a true combined arms army, but it's a lot more of, well, I have skirmish meleeing type of units, and maybe a center core of the hardest hitting counterpunch, and then a lot of core fundamental shooting bricks, or backbone type of units, which is fine. I personally like playing orcs in generally a lot of different ways. I'm good with either of them, but it's both very new, very appealing, in those ways, but a really big change. And we're really not approaching our damage in the same way either. The purpose of the wall and being riled up is more about positioning and activating abilities throughout the entire game rather than delivering a one punch back-breaking blow. Now, of course, you can get that off. A lot of the time, there are buffs that actually stack on top of other buffs and get better when you are riled up. So there's still that potential to just blam the enemy off the field on your go turn. But a lot of the time, you'll be playing a longer, more consistent game plan with your army, actually spreading out the wall so that you can get your armies going. And of course, I think that's really more for cunning gets and more of an expression of player skill as well. How you're going to apply these and stacks, and how you're going to actually use them and not getting rid of them too early or fully committing is going to be the difference between everybody's archetype. And I think that actually helps with this position play as well. So if we're going to play recon more, disruption, if it changes, all of those things. And of course, remember, points are not real, right? What I mean by that is that they change all the time. So what might be good right now we're starting can easily get adjusted just by point changes. So there's no reason not to look at everything. That being said, we're still gonna, that's the whole point of this video, really. And of course, it's really nice to see that we can interact with Battle Shocks a lot more. So I don't have a hot take necessarily on how to apply Battle Shock yet. I didn't look too much into it, but I do know it's there, and I do like to see that it's there. But especially clearing Battle Shocks. I think that GW is gonna look to do that a lot more in this edition that we haven't even got to see yet. So the fact that we have it built into our codex, that one of our favorite core pieces like the war bosses are gonna interact with that is a big deal, and it really helps. And of course, what also before really we helps, jump back into the video, shout out to Monument Hobbies and their Pro Acryl paints. If you're an orc player, you already know the pain of painting mobs of models, vehicles, bikers, walkers, too many lads at once. And that's why I like Pro Acryl. The paint is high quality, easy to work with, and comes with properly thin paint right out the bottle, which means less time fighting with your paints and more time getting your wall on the table. So whether you're a new org player and joining the Great Wall, or you're trying to finish another 20 gets before your event, and check out Pro Acryl paints from Monument Hobbies using my affiliate link in the description. It helps support the channel and no extra cost to you, because the faster you paint, the faster you wall. Now, there's one more thing that we said. We are faster and less durable. Well, if most people are aware of that now, just keep in mind as we go through all these slides, I take that in consideration with these hot takes. Now, starting off with the Infantry dakka, I've already kind of shown and revealed that this is a big backbone to a lot of people's output. There are other key units, strong units that we're going to be looking at, but here's just for a straight up Infantry dakka. Now, Some of this is quite familiar, but it's changed in really good ways. When we go look at tank busters plus the shock attack gun, I think this is a very versatile gun platform, right? Now, if you are aware, this used to be something we had access to with Dread Mob, for example, when you used to be able to stack lethal, sus, ignore cover. It was an amazing output that people weren't really aware of because they didn't want to take the hazardous. Now you have that on everything, and your tank busters are strength 12 with their hunter profiles and just straight up shooting with 2 hits. Your shock attack guns have a more reliable profile as well. Now, to get the reroll ones, you do have to be Record Crew, and Record Crew does have great incentives I will also talk about for why you would play them with other vehicles and core traits. But when we're just talking about the unit itself, if you were to take tank busters, shock attack gun, boom, just built into what's on the data sheet, you can literally plug this with anything and just be taking hulls off the field left and right. The fact that one turn you get both of these combined access is amazing. You're hitting on 4 pluses. It's such a great profile, and if you go into records, you're even more reliable. Expect to see this everywhere. Of course, you're not as good into infantry in some cases, but you still are quite efficient into infantry. So all in all, this is going to be one of the premier units. I think at least taking one is going to be pretty impressive and likely. Then we go into, and there's more ways to use this. Don't worry, we're still going to talk about it. Just hot takes. Remember, hot takes, guys. Then we do flash kits. Of course, where everybody's aware, Big Mech is a very appealing leader for this brick. If you didn't know, he can actually lead this unit now for the flash kits. They have multiple leader options, and one of the best ways people like to use this in the record crew, the flash kits datasheet itself gets additional AP, so it easily stacks with the record crews, re-rolling ones to hit, and then also other strats. Now, if you are taking the Big Mech and you are taking a big 10-man brick, you get great mobility for his datasheet ability of auto-advancing 6. But that is such a huge profile, and you aren't able to fall back into the shoot in any of the detachments. So just keep that in mind that that's going to be one of the weakest traits. But having sustain on the riled up or go turn or whenever you get access to it, which will have more ways that you can get access to it, we'll talk about. But this unit is great for Overwatch, great for really making the enemy unit sweat whenever they're trying to position around the field, and really techs into that combined arms profile and identity that we have now. Now, never forget the SWAT teams, right? The 5-man units that can go into trucks or battle wagons or whatever. I still think those are quite appealing, and people, of course, should and be interested in taking 5-mans. Kind of hard to find flash kits right now. So if you only got 5-mans, get on SWAT teams. You'll have a great time with that. And then last but not least, just a fun tech piece that Discord and everybody was talking about is Big Mech and Mega Armor with super glowy thing. You can look at, that's in the Shooter Boy detachment, and then you go to the Mad Mech detachment if you want even more tech potential. But in theory, it gives that model anti-infantry 4+ devastating wounds, and if you have the teleporter blasta, you get built-in 9 shots, blast 1, so it's strength 9, -2, flat 3 damage. In theory, you're shooting 10 shots. It would be hitting on 4s with sustain, ignore covers. It could re-roll once, I think, in the right detachment. But if you roll the right Mad Max, you can be getting +1 a hit on ballistics, so you could be hitting on 4s and also, 3s, excuse me. Then you can be hitting on 3s with this Big Mech and Mega Armor, and that's all devastating wounds when you're shooting anti-infantry 3 damage. So you could just straight up blow little Terminator units off the field, 3-wound infantry units off the field, fellow Mega Knobs off the field. But actually using it is quite hilarious, though. I do know that people like to be hilarious. So if you like those fun tech pieces, you might want to look into that because the Mega Mech Armor is otherwise not that appealing. Then we go into just getting stuck in. Of course, a lot of us still want to get stuck in. I know my bully boys, my fighting gits, my crusty boys, they want to know what's going on here. Now, what I will say is if you're looking at mono melee versus combined arms, you aren't somewhat playing to a detriment. I think that you do have the potential to play with far less transports than before. It helps you stage up, but you're not necessarily as fast with like auto advance 6 infantry moving around as you used to as much, other than the Big Mac that we talked about, but not like a strat from Freebooters that everybody was looking into, and then a scout, your infantry forward. So if you're really just looking into getting these guys around the field, some of them will have transports for launching. And I think that you're still going to be teching into combined arms. That doesn't mean you can't go into bully boys plus tide and then maybe a secondary support shooting like Rekkas. Of course, you could also end up choosing another more killy, maybe Beast Snagga detachment that goes with this as well if you want to tag in some more elite units and killing vehicles and monsters, because bully tide, though you do get sustain and lethal, that you'll actually have access to for both your boys and your knobs slash mega knobs whenever you're getting charges off, which is sick if you're playing that stack. You will still need stuff to kill vehicles and monsters, but mind you, the dispositions are going to be a big deal. So, for example, if you're someone that likes priority, doing a little actions with grots, you might want to do cunning gits or record crew because then it helps you with your shooting boys. Maybe you want to play a recon disposition so that you can play all over the field and get into fights. There's a lot of options for that third 1DP disposition. But all in all, being able to stack sustain lethal all across those hard-hitting units and then having some firing support behind it, it can actually have a really great time and still give you a hint of what you used to have. Then we have bullies. Just as a whole, just an announcement. I think right now is an okay time to kind of hold back on mobs. We lack the feel no pains. We're really far less durable, and the whole meta is going to adjust to T5 infantry across the table. We've seen Space Marines are T5 now. They're going to get adjustment for all the CSM models as such. So our T5, just infantry, is just going to get swiped away personally. So mobs are quite brittle. I don't think that people are going to be taking many of those. That doesn't mean you can't take a lot of boys on your list. A bunch of 10-man units are going to be interesting. If somehow Warhorde ends up being 2 DP, or if GW realizes it's quite weak and can be 2 DP, then you can also have a lot more interesting plays with that as well. And then Breaker Boys, I kind of also wanted to put my take on this. So I do think they're a little niche. They're good versus their hunter target. So vehicles, monsters, if you take a good leader on them, it could be a big boss, it could be a war boss. But they are not as good into infantry as they used to. Where we like them is that they were another 3 damage profile to enemy infantry on that go turn. They don't have as much access to sustain as they used to necessarily. So I think Breaker Boys are one of those units that fell back behind, and Record Crew doesn't really work for them as much. So as much as I'm into still having these skirmishing 5-man stuff, trucks, SWAT teams, whatever, I'm appealing to them because of what we'll talk about when we get to transports. I think Breaker Boys just simply fell off, and you might want to put them on the shelf for a little bit. Then we go into 5-man knobs. So I think 5-man knobs plus a big boss has been a little slept on, right? Of course, if you don't want to, it's fine. You can go for a war boss, but the price difference. Big boss 175 for 5 knobs, and then the war boss is 225. This is equivalent in theory, right? Not that I like to compare units often, but just so people understand, this is very similar to like an 8-bound unit, right? A 3-man 8-bound unit and World Eaters can get similar buffs and access and strength profiles and volume of attacks, and then they also have their character. So if they go up to 225 with their character, I think it's a Slaughterbound. So that's similar to the War Boss, but if you take a big boss, and you can still take a truck, for example. Now, mind you, you get 15 attacks at strength 10 from the knobs. The big boss is going to have his cleave, big choppa, where it's strength 7 minus 2, I think, 2 damage. Or I have to double check that, maybe 1. But he still has his 5 attacks that are pretty respectable, as well as built-in precision. Mind you, you have your rocket attacks. One of your guys has paired, so he's going to be rolling the hits and re-rolling the wounds. And you don't necessarily have to give up a war boss if you do give riled up to this unit in the variety of other ways there are. I mean, we can say the war boss the war horde enhancement. You can get the truck riled up so that when they disembark, they're already getting riled up so they can run up into a field and getting up into a fight. I think they're a respectable skirmish unit at their price value. Not blowing anyone's socks off, but if you're looking to get that kind of unit stuck into a fight, I think they're totally fine, right? They're still putting out roughly 20 attacks as a unit. So it still feels pretty respectable at a good strength profile. A lot of stuff's going to be moving to T5. So having this will help you be able to kind of punch those units away. Mind you, like I said, with sustain lethal 5+. So if you get them near Ghaz, they also punch people's socks off for real. Another thing we have are trucks and wagons. I wanted to give a couple hot takes about these units. So the gun wagons. I think for 150 points, quite decent. Rerolling ones. Zap gun is the profile I would take on them. They do not have firing deck, keep in mind. Only thing that you really need to consider, in my opinion, would be Wrecker Crew as the disposition. There are other ones, of course. I'm not saying you can't, like Warhorde has a little bit of interest there. But as a whole, for Wrecker Crew for +1 to hit on this, it's still a transport, so it can still use this strat for +1 to hit. I think that's quite appealing and attractive. You have the for its hull profile, just having a profile running up, getting in fire lanes, acting like a little bit of a truck. I respect it. Totally think it's up for consideration. Then we have trucks slash battle wagons. The big appeal here, more than just the typical staging up, jumping out, and charging people, is the firing deck. People are using these like mobile bunker platforms, just getting stuck, shooting people. People are stacking blitz detachment, the record crew detachment, the firing gizmo enhancement on some of these, so that you can put a big boss in there and get sustain and ignore cover. When you're riled up, you actually get sustain on that transport. So people are enjoying that, and then you can still use the strap from Record Crew for +1 a hit for that, so the firing deck can still pop off and shoot everybody. That works for your hunter profiles. That works for the new flash kits, where they have their Melta profile. They have all those profiles that you can choose from that are going to be shooting out of your transport. Now, there is the consideration of taking hazardous. Don't necessarily advise popping off hazardous on your vehicles, because you're already quite exposed with these, and there's a lot of downsides to getting disembarked. That being said, people are still using them for the case of shooting people and having a good time firing with them. And I really do like that for the most part. Not sure if I'll be adding as many on that crew, but people are really into it, and I do think that you should be taking it into consideration. You'll be seeing it around. Hunter rigs and kill rigs for their 5-up feel no pains. This one's up all over the place, where I like it, but I don't see too many of them getting the list. Now, what I will say with my experience, I was playing a lot of the Hunt, and what used to be the wagon detachment gave you auto 6. I'm having a brain fart of what it was called, but that one is what this is pretty much now, Blitzer Crew. And I will say the ability to run one of those monster type wagons at people, these hunter rigs, with its stack of 5-up invuln, 5-up feel no pain, harass enemy expansions, really draw the enemy's attention to over focus on them, is a big deal. The spell casting is going to be awesome for making guys hit better, for the re-rolling ones, having psychic to ignore modifiers. On some people, they're going to be giving you modifier ignores, because just face it, you have a little bit less +1 a hit in some case on your melee, because you're really not as melee focused. You're not going to be taking so much stacking on that, and those units that have it, like your trike doesn't have it, is more like built in. Obviously, beast bosses don't have it anymore on Squigosaurus. The war boss is going to be on less units because he's more expensive. So all in all, we have a little less +1 to hit, and so enemies that are giving you -1 to hit, you're going to feel it a little bit more. Therefore, psychic ignoring modifiers might feel a little better as well. The weird boy himself might be interesting, but that's a different conversation. But for the rigs, I do think they have interest. There's a bit of salt ramp you can get from them, from the hunt to kill rig. If you want to get your snaggle boys into fights, give them +1 to wound. That's really, really fun. And I do think these guys, when they do get their invuln, have some potential to actually survive some firepower, as long as they're staged up a little early. And some dispositions help with that based off their maps more than others. Like if you can get the 6 terrain pieces ones, your rigs might survive a little better. So food for thought when you're picking your dispositions, if you're going to choose these rigs, in my opinion. From my experience, I paid a lot of priority with them, so that's where that comes from. If I missed anything else, let me know, because I'm trying to make sure I don't go too long, because there's a lot I could say. I'm trying to make sure I consolidate this. Now, somehow I messed up my own writing. Thanks, guys. That's a real-time error you see at the top. Sorry about that. So now this is walkers, mag guns, and flyers. Right off the rip, just to pick the Band-Aid off, a lot of people are already aware of the Waaagh boom. That's the flyer that we have. It can come in on turn 1. You can give it riled up at all times. Against vehicles and monsters, you get +1 to wound. It has built-in cover on essentially all its weapons. Really good on the Flyboys detachment, and came in for less points than even I expected. I was expecting like 250 for this thing, 225. Came in at 175. So if this thing doesn't get addressed right off the rip, expect this to be kind of spammed all over the place at events until it gets addressed. GW is trying to get flyers on the field, so just be aware that this one's going to be one of those that's a hassle. Hopefully, it doesn't just become extinct after it gets addressed for its nerfing. Then we have some mech guns. Mech guns can be a bit fun, in my opinion. They have a plethora of profiles. GW get a great profile, great job in that. Depending on how the meta shifts when the Space Marine Codex drops and the Ork Codex drops, is what I think will determine if these guys actually see play, though they do have a lot of really cool distinct properties, like, strats and access. Like, The +1 to for lethal, sorry, the 1 CP for lethal and sustain at the same time for the Mad Max attachment, pretty sweet. They're increasing movements, pretty sweet. The Mega Mech giving them a 4-up invuln and being able to regen. Those guys will be pretty awesome as well. Some people, like Mark Perry, of course, will probably consider maybe these in individual units and bringing them off strategic reserves to get firing positions. Enemies don't want to take the time, their activations into these little units. So that might be a way to draw the fire as well and kind of lock down lanes or harass them a lot. And if we get flyers, their anti-fly vehicle weapon is actually quite appealing. Now, dakka rigs. Dakka rigs are definitely extremely powerful units with the right combination, which it will be Dread Mob, access to the table and Dread Mob. For sure, if they use the enhancement, they're going to be able to get access to Lone Op and reroll ones. Expect to see dakka rigs as the main reason why people even take Dread Mob as a whole. You just take 3 of these. It acts as your firing support. Very, very, very potent with its access to get mobile, access to get assault, and you're going to be getting sustained lethal, and the profile just goes good into any infantry unit in the game, especially if you roll +2 strength or additional AP into the right profiles. Even small vehicles don't like being shot at by the dakka rig, so this thing can end up going up in points, and its style probably still be worth playing, which is an awesome thing for anybody that got the Armageddon box. I'm very happy for new players to start the game with a unit like this in your collection that you can kind of lean into and actually utilize. I think you should, and not feel bad about it. And then we have Killicans versus Death Dreads. I'm personally on the Killican train. You guys know I'm a Killican lover. Last event I went to for the end of the 10th edition Codex, I took 12 cans and 2 dakka rigs. Got first place, had a fun time. First place, had a fun time. And all in all, I think they're going to have a lot of appeal to a lot of different people. Cans are straight up bullies on infantry, whether there's mass units of low toughness or other elite infantry units that are going to be running on the field. Cans can handle them. Getting +2 strength on even their rockets means that they can deal with some certain monster profiles and vehicle profiles. The amount of investment enemies have to take into killing these units when they even are riled up so they can tank Meltas better is also way more than they want. So it takes quite some investment. The mobile is pretty sweet, and remember, the mobile works in the charge phase as well, that strat. So you can end up getting these guys in positions that normally you wouldn't be able to, and locking down enemies or harassing enemies in ways that they hadn't really considered. Cans also would be pretty sick for Overwatch situations. So I think cans are going to also be on the table. I'm looking at 9 to 12 for sure. I was already running 12, so the only reason 9 is because a lot of the other things on my list went up in points, right? So cans are fantastic. I expect you to see a lot more of them. Remember, we the can man around here. Then we go into mounts. So mounts are another one of those profiles as a whole. Most of these that we're talking about that are just in the right points value, besides pigs, because everything else went up. A lot of the time, our really elite, real strong punchy units went up to a point value that's hard to consider to many of them. So in this case, because what trikes and bikes get you with their multi-damage on the charge now, mind you, these guys could take the brute boss detachment. They can get +1 damage on that as well when they get into charges. They can take the dakka profile. What was this? The shiny shooter, I think it's called. I'm looking at it right now. The Gobshot Thunderbus, right? You could take this on the trike as well if you wanted like a fighty trike. And then on the charge, the bike gives it +1 damage 2 and +1 strength, so it can get up to strength 8. Its value per point and its toughness is pretty awesome. And the trike's ability to rile up the truck should not be slept on, right? That way you can get flash gets riled up, you can get those tank busted units riled up, they can get out, they'll have access to sustain and ignore cover outside of the full army-wide wall and get really nice position, offensive potential on enemy outside of the main wall turn. So the trike has its purpose in either chilling back a little bit and giving out its buff until that full army-wide go where it gets stuck in and really flips on objective. Or if you have an ideal target and a small skirmish, you can get these 2-3 damage punches in, maybe even 4 damage punches in. So all in all, trikes are in a really, really good position. And if you have at least one trike, you should definitely consider him, even for his gigantic size. As for Defcopters, they got move from vehicles in our mounts. That's great for the anti profile. It's great for what they get for bring it down. We're cool to see that. A lot of the time, you're going to see 3x3s. These guys will be awesome for the fact that they have uppy downy. When they do come down from the deep strike, then they actually get +1 to hit on that. You can stack them with flyboys, where they're going to get another +1 to hit if they're within 6 inches of that round of fly that we talked about earlier. Their rockets have a consistent profile. They have lethals as well on those. So they're just all around going to be fun. Now, Cultist Speed did change that they can't fall back and shoot, which means, to be honest, I don't think for the trikes and bikes or for the Coptas, you necessarily have to take Cultist Speed. I know that sounds crazy. There is interest, like maybe your trucks not being able to hit them on 1, 2s, and 3s, or your bikers or your Coptas. I understand. I understand the strats. If you really want to play them, sure. Fallback and charges are pretty cool. I understand that as well. Sometimes that might be worth it for trikes, but as all in all, because of everything else that's useful and active and how these units are being played, I don't necessarily think you have to take Hold to Speed on them, but that's just my hot take. You tell me what you think. But if you are sticking deep into mounts or Cult of Speed units as a whole, like War Trikes, then War Buggies, then War Trikes might help you a bit with giving out access to lethal for Speed Freak units. So that applies for your trucks, though, right? So if your trucks are shooting at units and they have all those other access buffs that we talked about, they're getting +1 to hit. They're playing the Rucka and the Blitz detachment, and somehow you have a War Tracks on your field. Well, maybe you decided to, oops, now that target gets lethal to hit whenever the truck shoots at it, for example. That, of course, works for your buggies, blah, 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 as well, on the fighting and the shooting phase. And there's not a limit, so you can shoot multiple tracks into multiple units. And if you are lucky enough to actually get hits, then fantastic. You're going to get lethal hits for the rest of the Speed Freak units that are targeting on them. So that's another fun little tech piece. If people want to bring one, they can have Lone Op. A bunch of weird, fun ways to bring Lone Op into the game now for our army that we didn't have before. And the War Track is one of them. Like I said, if you're sitting around near a trike, for example, you know, he can be chilling, giving out riled up to stuff. The War Track's getting Lone Op from him, and then the War Track's shooting at things to get lethal, and then the truck that got riled up is getting lethal from shooting at those units. So a bunch of cool stuff, not just simple playing Cult of Speed and charging at people necessarily, though you could do that as well. Then last and certainly least, we have the pigs, right? I think if you are playing pigs, it's probably most likely just like a 4-man. A 4-man on certain missions and layouts, you could probably stage them up relatively well to try to protect maybe your natural expansion personally, I think, or someone from just straight up standing on the middle. Like if they know that you can get to them because they're mobile. Hard to say. I will say against vehicles and monsters, they're quite appealing because they're additional AP. The damage 3 is also appealing. But personally, between me and you, I've been affected by -1 hits a lot of time from them. Them hitting on 3s, not a lot of easy access to sustain necessarily, other than Warhorde from what I remember. All in all, pigs I think are just unfit for duty in a really odd position, and they would need to come down drastically. But maybe someone has a different opinion. You let me know. And I haven't super committed to this, but slowly as days and time passes by, I just find it quite unreasonable to try to take pigs at all. And then we go to epic monsters / characters. Really, it's just to bring the beast boss on this because I didn't have them in another slot. Didn't really feel like putting them in there. But I just wanted to say a few things about all our epic characters and where they might end up, and how people might be having fun with the beast bosses on Squigosaurus. So as for Ghaz, I think how the community responded to him, like the general 40k to meet him, was a little bit over the top. It's not that Ghaz is too isn't that strong. He is quite strong. But the whole Ork Codex going up in points and our shooting units being brought down, not having access to so much critical 5+s, lethals not applying to all monsters, the volume of punches we have, even his aura is less impactful, and the units he's applying it to cost more, and we're not going to have all these bricks that are reaching out doing these things, because even trying to get these bricks to activate would be quite devastating. Now, there is that whole tree branch thing that we used to do in the past, if you've been around, you know, a long time, but to summarize it, say you have Ghaz centralized and you train out several units of 10-man boys with maybe their big bosses or their war bosses at the tips and the knobs at the tips of the unit, and then the rest of them kind of fish back to Ghaz's aura. Maybe then you could end up kind of reaching out and punching several units kind of pretty hard with the key units in some tricksy way. But other than that, yours are going to affect like 1 to 2 units in their punching. And then Ghaz is going to be kind of easy to delete when enemies can get within range of him, in my opinion. Because they have to do it already, right? You have to do it for Demon Primarchs. You have to do it for super tough Necron characters. So at the top tables, competitive game, he's going to be quite easy to deal with. Intermediate, lower level tables, I can see why he could be hard to interact with. For example, trying to get, you can have fun ways to get low op out of him. Like if you have something like a Nazdreg, for example, where he's in your deep strike and you have Ghaz running around, and you tell the enemy, well, Ghaz is in the open right now, but if I Ingress, Nazdreg, I'm going to give him lone op because I'm going to drop within 3 inches of gas. Now he's going to be lone op, and so is Nazdreg standing on a hit, and you can't get to him. That could be a funny, weird little interaction, but most of the time, people are going to be pre-measuring, kind of understanding where he's coming from. But I still like him, and I'm really happy with his glow up nonetheless. Mazrog, another really big glow up. I'm really interested in people just running him. In general detachments, I don't think you have to play Beast Nagas to play him, because he's just good at destroying vehicles and monsters as he is already. And you just be kind of teching more into that, but I don't see anything wrong with that either. So Mazrog, as a beat stick, if you need some quick, I need to pick up some anti-vehicle stuff, I don't necessarily want to shoot, I like having this kind of thing on the field. I play into a lot of vehicles and monsters and hulls. I think picking up a Maz point and per dollar is pretty solid for any people that are getting into the game. Beast bosses on Squigosaurs, their ability to give out their buff and being able to spam maybe 2 of these guys plus a Maz could be appealing. Now, there is ways that maybe you become saturated in Hero Hammer, and for some people that could be appeal, right? It could be that you're playing the big shot Thunder bus and you're taking proper killy, and you're taking maybe another enhancement on another character, right? Because those are just war boss models that you could take those on. So it does work on even beast bosses on Squigosaur. And then you take a Moss, and you're like, well, I'm just running around with all these kind of monster loan out units. That could end up being a way people also start teching into these beast bosses on Squigosaur, and then maybe that's an appeal for Warhorde, for example. But we'll see how this drains out. I'm pretty excited about it. Then we have Waagh's Dakka Gutsmech. A lot of people are still going to keep playing him. Just because how he was already designed is for this edition, and even him going up in points is all right. A lot of the time we are used to him as a crutch, his speed, his combined arms potential, his lance. He got even better at fighting. For example, if you are a new player and you picked up a Waagh's Dakka, let's say you play Warhorde and you use his additional cleave strat where he gets +1 cleave to all his weapons, and you go into like a 10-man unit. Right, you can end up stacking up 20 attacks on just his claw, for example, because you have sustain. So it's pretty sweet to know that Waagh's Dakka got slightly even better, and he was really built for this in his combined arms. So even going up in points, he can be played, but he can also not be played. And then as for Nazdreg, obviously I don't have him yet. I haven't really proxied him either, but he should be great because if you look at a War Boss on Mega Armor, paying for an enhancement for Deep Strike, you might as well just pay for Nazdreg. And then there may be something to be said about Nazdreg playing by himself and just running around giving out war boss stuff. He's also high toughness. He has a good armor save. He has good combined arms potential between his own shooting and fighting. So there could be a world where Nazdreg's just played solo op and getting around the field. So I think that's enough being said for the hot takes on the characters. If I missed anything, you let me know. So with that being said, we'll move to the live chat so this doesn't get super long. I just wanted to give my hot takes, kind of bring the community up to speed with some of the takes that the general Ork community has had, and some of my own personal opinions. Rip, Gork, and Mork. Yeah, I know Gork and Mork kind of suck right now. We have Onion Ringman, so we're at the live chats right now. Shout out to the live chat. Shout out to the rewatch gang, of course. Love you, Gits. So we have Onion Ringman, so became a member. Shout out to the channel member. Whoa! So of course, there's still that RTT after action report you could check out. Let me know how I did, how I can improve, because I want to do more of those for this edition with the fun list that I like to run out. Because everyone's going to be running the most hottest thing on the menu, but I'm going to be running everything on the menu as I always do. So thank you for joining. And then we also got the Bad Dog with 10 Waaagh Tactic gifted memberships. Thank you very much for that. You get that's love right there, and I greatly appreciate it. It's always very humbling, and it means a lot for the generosity. And thank you. You just spawned 10U little green skin gets all over the field. So thank you very much, W's in the chat for that. And as chat's saying, it looks like they're excited about Killicans. And some people are really just saying, hey, I can't wait to get into combat with some bully boys. So to the rewatch gang, if I missed anything, be sure to leave it in the comments. This was meant to be a hot takes. I wasn't covering everything, so I will be coming out with my top favorite units. I'll be coming out with some list videos, some tier list videos, and then of course, like we always do when the actual book drops, we'll have in-depth analysis of every single data sheet, their combos, how they could be applied, and so much more. So thank you, and of course, there's always one thing to keep in mind: is don't cross our wall, because we'll knock your teeth out. And of course, leave a like and subscribe. If I do bad, then of course you can always unsubscribe.